220 American soldiers dead in 24 hours. That is Iran's official military claim. Stated publicly, on the record, by Iran's armed forces spokesperson. Not a rumor. Not a leaked document. Not an anonymous source whispering to a journalist. An official declaration that in a single day of coordinated strikes across Bahrain and multiple Gulf installations, 220 American military personnel were killed. America's official response, 8, maybe 10. One of those numbers is a lie, and the footage tells you which one. When a missile strike completely destroys a military base, when the before and after satellite images show a functioning installation reduced to a crater, and the government claims single-digit casualties, you have exactly two options. Either the base was empty, which means it served no military purpose and cost billions of dollars for no reason, or the casualties are being hidden from the American public in numbers that, if revealed, would end this war overnight. The soldiers on those bases know the truth. The medics treating the wounded know the truth. The chaplains holding the hands of the dying know the truth. And piece by piece, through leaks and satellite imagery and the testimony of people who were there, the truth is going to surface. The way it always does when governments fight wars they cannot win and cannot honestly explain. But here is what makes this specific moment different from every previous development in this conflict, and why the next 72 hours may be the most dangerous window in the entire crisis. America just quietly flew its E-6B Mercury Nuclear Command aircraft into the Gulf. If you have never heard of the E-6B Mercury, that is by design. It does not carry conventional bombs. It does not carry troops. It carries something far more specific and far more consequential: the command and control infrastructure for America's nuclear arsenal. It is the airborne platform from which the U.S. military would coordinate and authorize nuclear strikes if ground-based command systems were destroyed or compromised. America does not fly this aircraft into active conflict zones as a gesture. It does not position nuclear command infrastructure over the Gulf as a bluff or a diplomatic signal. The E-6B Mercury is there because someone in the chain of command made the calculation that conventional options are running out and the nuclear option needs to be within operational reach. Tucker Carlson, not exactly a voice from the anti-war left, said it directly and publicly. This conflict is heading toward nuclear. China's most prominent military think tank analyst, a man who functions as a public spokesperson for Communist Party strategic thinking, said something that should stop every person reading this cold. He said America has taken more damage in this conflict than at any point since Vietnam. He said the situation is moving toward nuclear escalation, and he said it needs to stop immediately. When China's military establishment publicly urges de-escalation and warns about nuclear drift, the alarm bells should be deafening. China does not make those statements lightly. China does not expose its strategic assessments publicly unless the situation is severe enough that silence becomes its own form of complicity. The situation is that severe. Iran's strategy is now visible in full detail for anyone willing to look at it clearly. Military theorists call it death by 1,000 cuts. Do not deliver a single catastrophic blow that galvanizes the enemy and unites domestic opinion behind the war effort. Instead, apply constant pressure, continuous attrition, relentless degradation of resources, personnel, equipment, and will. Make every day more expensive than the last. Make every week's losses harder to absorb than the week before. Until the enemy's capacity to fight, not just its will, but its literal physical capacity, is exhausted. In 24 hours, Iran hit American installations across Bahrain and the broader Gulf in what its military is calling its most destructive single operational period of the entire conflict. Multiple simultaneous strikes coordinated across the entire theater. Maximum damage to maximum installations in minimum time, and America's nuclear command aircraft is now circling overhead. Dubai Marina was hit today. Qatar's international airport has told all passengers, do not come. The Strait of Hormuz, already near empty of commercial traffic, has gone quieter still. And Trump, facing the worst military situation America has confronted since Vietnam, according to China's own strategic analysts, is reportedly planning to send 5,000 ground troops into Iran. 5,000 soldiers. Into a country of 90 million people. A country that defeated the Soviet Union's proxy in the 1980s while absorbing chemical weapons supplied by Western governments. A country that has survived 40 years of crippling sanctions without fracturing. A country that just killed, by its own official count, 220 American soldiers in a single day. America could not hold Afghanistan with 100,000 troops over 20 years. The plan is 5,000 in Iran. The nuclear command plane is already in the air. Let us parse what China actually said this week, because Beijing does not speak carelessly, and what it said is the clearest external assessment of where this conflict genuinely stands. China's military analyst made 3 statements. First, America has suffered more military damage in this conflict than at any point since Vietnam. Second, the trajectory is toward nuclear escalation. Third, it must stop immediately. More damage than since Vietnam is not a poetic exaggeration. It is a specific military assessment with specific content. Vietnam cost America 58,000 dead over 20 years. The suggestion is not that this conflict's casualties have reached that number. The suggestion is that the rate of damage, the degradation of military infrastructure, the destruction of defense systems, the strategic humiliation of American power projection is occurring at a pace and completeness that has no modern parallel. Half of America's regional Patriot systems destroyed, the THAAD radar in Jordan eliminated, 25 to 30% of early warning infrastructure offline. 3 aircraft carriers deployed into a theater where Iran has already demonstrated it can force carrier retreats. Interceptor stockpiles depleted to levels that will take years to replenish. And now Iran's military claiming 220 American dead in 24 hours, a number America is officially disputing with figures that the physical evidence of the strikes makes mathematically incoherent. That is the damage profile China is describing as worse than Vietnam. And China has access to intelligence assessments that go well beyond what is publicly visible. The E-6B Mercury in the Gulf is not a tactical response. It is a strategic one. It is not there to bomb anything. It is there to ensure that if Iran's strikes destroy American ground-based command infrastructure at a critical moment, the nuclear chain of command survives. Continuity of government, continuity of nuclear command, airborne and survivable. Countries do not position nuclear command continuity aircraft over active conflict zones as a negotiating tactic. They do it when they are seriously considering options that require nuclear command continuity to be guaranteed. Tucker Carlson's warning and China's warning are saying the same thing from different directions. The conventional war is being lost. The nuclear option is being moved closer to the table, and the window to prevent catastrophic escalation is closing. Iran's response to the 5,000 ground troop announcement was neither fear nor diplomatic caution. It was an invitation. Iran's military commanders said it explicitly. Bring your soldiers. We have been preparing for this for decades. We watched Iraq. We watched Afghanistan. We built our defense doctrine, our tunnel networks, our decentralized command structures, and our popular mobilization capacity specifically around the scenario of American ground forces attempting to operate on Iranian soil. Come, this is not bravado. This is a country that absorbed an 8-year war with Iraq, a war in which Iraq used chemical weapons supplied by Western governments, and emerged with its territorial integrity intact and its military culture forged into something that has sustained 40 subsequent years of external pressure without breaking. Afghanistan resisted American occupation with a fraction of Iran's population, a fraction of its organizational sophistication, a fraction of its industrial capacity, and a fraction of its missile technology. It took 20 years. It ended with America's most visible military retreat since Saigon. Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is 4 times more populous, far more industrially developed, vastly better armed, and has been preparing specifically for American ground force entry since the day the Iraq War demonstrated what American ground campaigns look like when the political will to sustain them runs out. 5,000 soldiers into that scenario does not achieve military objectives. It creates hostages. The CIA and Mossad told Trump a specific story before this war started. Kill the supreme leader. The Iranian population, exhausted by sanctions, frustrated with the government, hungry for change, will pour into the streets. The regime will fracture. The military command structure will collapse in the chaos. American and Israeli assets will move in to support pro-Western Iranian opposition figures. The Kurds will mobilize from the north. The whole thing unravels in weeks. America walks out with a compliant Iranian government and access to Iranian oil and gas. That was the plan. That was the intelligence assessment delivered with confidence by agencies whose multi-billion-dollar annual budgets are supposed to produce accurate predictions about human behavior and political systems. Every single element of that assessment was wrong. The Iranian population did not take to the streets to welcome American liberation. It went to work. Markets stayed open. Daily life continued. The social collapse that the entire strategy depended on did not happen. Because 45 years of being told American power was coming for them had produced not a population waiting to be saved, but a population that had made its peace with exactly this scenario and decided to outlast it. The military command did not fracture. It decentralized, which is a completely different thing. 31 command centers, each with their own target packages and standing orders, operating simultaneously without requiring central coordination. You cannot decapitate a Hydra. Iran built its military command structure specifically to survive decapitation. The Kurds did not mobilize. The Iranian opposition figures America was counting on had no popular base inside the country, and the oil and gas Iran was supposed to hand over is still underground, still Iranian, and now protected by a military that has demonstrated it can destroy American defense systems faster than America can replace them. The intelligence failure here is not a small bureaucratic miscalculation. It is a catastrophic, ground-up misunderstanding of what Iran is, politically, culturally, militarily, and psychologically. The same agencies that predicted Iraqi weapons of mass destruction with confidence. That predicted the Taliban would not retake Afghanistan for years after American withdrawal, and watched them do it in days, have now produced an assessment of Iran so fundamentally wrong that the entire military operation built on it is visibly, publicly, undeniably failing. And the response to that failure is not recalibration. The response is escalation. 5,000 ground troops, nuclear command aircraft, 3 carrier groups in range of hypersonic missiles that have already demonstrated the ability to force carrier retreats. The historical parallel that every serious analyst is now reaching for is the most accurate one available: Vietnam. Not in the specific military tactics, not in the geography, in the fundamental structure of the failure. A war launched on false premises, sustained by institutional momentum and political ego long after the strategic case collapsed. Casualties being managed and minimized in official communications, while the actual human cost mounted in ways that eventually became impossible to suppress. A war that ended not with military victory, but with evacuation. A war that cost 58,000 American lives and reshaped American domestic politics for a generation. China's analyst invoked Vietnam deliberately, not as an insult, as a warning, as the most recent case study in what happens when American military power encounters an adversary that has decided to outlast it rather than defeat it in conventional engagement. Iran has decided to outlast America. It has the missiles, the doctrine, the decentralized command structure, the domestic social cohesion, and the 45-year preparation to do exactly that. America has the world's most expensive military, a nuclear command aircraft now airborne over the Gulf, 90% domestic opposition to the war, interceptor stockpiles depleted and unreplenishable until 2033, and a plan to send 5,000 soldiers into a country that just killed, by official Iranian count, 220 American soldiers in 24 hours. The math does not favor continuation. And yet here we are, because the political cost of stopping, of admitting that the intelligence was wrong, the strategy failed, the war cannot be won, and American military presence needs to leave the Gulf, is being calculated as higher than the human, military, and economic cost of continuing. That calculation is wrong. It has always been wrong in every war where leaders have made it. History's verdict on the leaders who made it in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, and now here is consistent and merciless. The Gulf states are asking America to leave. Iran has offered the same ceasefire terms it offered on day one: remove the bases, stop the war. China is warning publicly that nuclear escalation is approaching. The E-6B Mercury nuclear command aircraft is in the air over the Gulf right now. 220 American soldiers, or whatever the real number is behind the official fiction, died in the last 24 hours, and Trump is planning to send 5,000 more. At some point, through elections, through economic collapse, through military reality becoming impossible to manage or deny, the decision changes. It always does. The only variable is the cost of the interval between now and then. The people paying that cost are not the people making the decision. They never are. Share this with everyone you know right now. Iran claims 220 American soldiers killed in 24 hours. America's official number is 8. The satellite imagery of what the strikes left behind makes the official number physically impossible. America has quietly deployed its E-6B Mercury nuclear command aircraft over the Gulf, the plane used to authorize nuclear strikes if ground systems are destroyed. China's military analysts are publicly warning about nuclear escalation and saying America has taken more damage than at any point since Vietnam. Trump is planning to send 5,000 ground troops into Iran. Iran's response was one word: come. The nuclear command plane is already in the air. The window to change course is closing. And the people paying the cost of keeping it open are not the people deciding whether to close it.